first step is to create the invoice. Well, we have the date of the invoice, the April 27th up here. We need to find the amount of the invoice, which is going to be the net price. That net price comes from the trade discount, the 711.2. What does the 7 give us? Perfect, 93%, so 0.93. The 11 gives us 0.89. And the 2, 0.98. And what we can do is we can just actually multiply all that by the list price of $13,500, and that's going to give us that net price that goes on the invoice. Oops. What'd you end up with? Sounds about right. $10,950.47 is correct. So $10,950.47 is the amount that goes on the invoice. So now the rest of the invoice, we have that date of April 27th. We have our terms, 310 EOM. We have the $900 shipping that was paid by the seller. Again, we say it is the seller prepaid, that assumes it's going to be reimbursed by the buyer. And we have a June 8th $5,000 payment. Now that June 8th $5,000 payment is obviously separate from the invoice. It's not on the invoice itself. It comes later, but we're going to have it on there. We're going to need it for calculation here. So now we're going to create our timeline. Our timeline normally starts at the invoice date. However, this one will not, because end of month, EOM, that effective invoice date modifier. Is it going to be April 30th? No, it's actually going to be May 31st, the last day of May. So that means then our 310, our discount period of 3%, ends on June 10th. And the end of the credit period is June 30th. So the balance due must be paid by June 30th. But we have a payment on June 8th of $5,000. So that does give us a discount of 3%. So our credit times not 3%, but 0.97, good, gives us that amount paid of $5,000. So to find the amount of the credit, we would divide by 0.97. So the credit is 5,100 and that sounds right. Yep, 5154.64. So that's how much gets credited to their account. So now we're going to take the invoice amount, 10,950.47, then we are going to subtract the 5,154.64. $5,795.83 that must be paid is due by the June 30th. Any questions? Ooh, good call. $900. Okay, what do we have to do? So what do we have to do? There's no discount. No, there's no discount on the shipping. So that has to come out of the $5,000 payment first. So only 4,100 gets applied towards that invoiced amount. But we still have to give them the discount on that 4,100. So the credit times that 0.97 equals the payment not of 5,000 but of 4,100. I'm gonna pause for a second, give you guys some time to erase if you need to. Okay, so we have that credit. It's only 4,100 because you have to pay the shipping first. We divide by 0.97. So the amount of the credit is what, 4226.80. So that's what we subtract from that gross invoice. So $6,723.67 is the amount that has to be paid by June 30th. Now, for this unit of the course, we're assuming that it gets paid on or before that due date. And the next unit we talk about interest, which is what do they do if they don't get it paid? Well, how do we charge them? How do we figure out what they do owe? Any questions? Like I said, that little problem kind of includes everything that's been in last week's lecture. Yep. Right at $900 was paid by the seller. It has to be reimbursed by the buyer. Yep, it's prepaid by the seller because remember the shipping company, the old COD days just don't exist anymore because the shipping company pick up the package, take it to the buyer and wait for the buyer to pay them and the buyer wouldn't pay them. So the shipping company delivered it. They don't leave the package if they don't get paid. But the shipping company stuck with it. So now they don't usually put anything on the truck until they're paid. So the seller has to pay the freight no matter what, and the buyer will reimburse them for it. Got credit for it? Oh, gotcha. Okay, so like we said, last time we were talking about the manufacturer or the distributor to the retailer. To date, we're going to take that next step, which goes from the retailer to the consumer. Now, the biggest concept when we're dealing with retailer to consumer is the idea of markup. And markup can be calculated, well, it's calculated in one way, but can be represented in a couple different ways. A percent markup, which is just a percentage of a given value, or the dollar amount of the markup. Obviously, the two are linked and they're both very important. Simple formula that governs pretty much everything we're going to do tonight. Cost. That is the price charged from the distributor to the retailer. Plus markup. That markup, of course, is the extra money that the retailer puts onto that item to cover overhead. What is overhead? Overhead is typically, what's that? Okay. Yeah, overhead is typically considered to be things that are going to have to be paid whether the company does any business or not, like rent, electricity, things like that, heat. Those are the things that are going to be paid whether they sell anything or not. They have those expenses. Then other costs, other than the cost of the product itself, you have labor, possibly insurance, things like that, that might be directly related with doing business. And then, of course, the third very important thing that the markup includes is profit. And of course, the cost plus the markup is equal to the selling price. This is the price charged from retailer to consumer. Now, there are two types of markup. There is markup based on cost. Markup based on cost is what most of us would probably think of when we think of a percent markup. It's the dollar amount of the markup. I'm going to start abbreviating markup as just MU. So the dollar markup is a percent of the cost. Then there is markup based on selling price. You're going to see selling price abbreviated SP for most of the rest of the night. This is where the dollar markup is a percent of the selling price. This is often referred to as the margin or the profit margin. Let's start out with that first one, markup based on cost. First, let's talk about that phrase, based on cost. Base, remember, was a term when we were doing percents. That term base referred to whatever was the whole thing, the 100%. Remember what we were basing our calculation off of, what we were starting with. Markup based on cost is where we take the dollar amount of the cost and we use that to calculate the markup. So let's take a look at, let's say we have an item that costs $23. Our markup is 30% on cost. We typically don't use the word based on cost. we just say it's 30% on cost, which does mean based on cost. So let's find the markup and the selling price. So we'll find the dollar amount of the markup and the selling price. So 30% is 30 out of 100. Well, this is based on cost, which means the cost matches up with the 100%. So $23 goes on bottom. If we cross multiply and divide, 30 times 23 divided by 100, what do we get? $6.90. So $6.90, that is the dollar amount of the markup. So the selling price is our cost plus the $6.90 markup gives us $29.90. This is nothing more than a percent increase problem. Well, it does, but only because the percent increase is a concept that is kind of tough for people to grasp. We actually had this type of problem in week 3, back at the end of our first unit, and it was a problem that a lot of us struggled on that first test. Remember we did a table like this where we had some sort of a starting value? We added to it some increase, and we got an ending value. Does that look familiar? And we said each of those items is described by 2 numbers. One is a percent, and the other, in many cases, is a dollar amount. In most of our applications, it's always going to be a dollar amount. And we started with 100%, and we worked our way up from there. These problems, these markup problems, use an exact table. The table looks exactly like that. It's cost, as we were saying, plus markup equals selling price. We have percents on one side and dollars on another. Since this is markup based on cost, that markup on cost means the 100% goes with the cost. This was a 30% markup, correct? Yes, it was. So the markup amount was 30%, which means the selling price is 100 plus 30 or 130%. The only dollar amount we had was the dollar amount of the cost, which was $23. And we were asked to find the dollar markup and the selling price. Well, to find the dollar markup here, of course, we always need the row that has both numbers in it, don't we? And then we're going to use the row that we're looking for. That's the markup row first. We can cross multiply and divide right in the table. Just like we did up above, 30 times 23 divided by 100 is $6.90. We could do the same thing to find the selling price. We could ignore the middle row and cross multiply or divide, or we can just go ahead and add that up, $29.90. Now you might be looking at, why would we make all that big table for a problem like this when all we had to do was find the percent and add it on? Well, because we run into problems where it's not that simple. Let's say we're told that the selling price is $40 and it is a 40% markup on cost. And I want you to find the dollar amount of the markup. I'd let you try this one, but very good chance you're going to come up with the wrong answer. So let's just go ahead and walk you through this one first. Cost plus markup equals selling price. This is, we'll put percents on the left side and dollars on the right side. It's markup on cost, so we're going to put 100 in where the cost is. What else do we know? Where does the $40 go? Selling price. Dollar side of the selling price. Where does the 40% go? Yes, the percent side on the markup. Is there anything else that we can find real quickly right now? You got it. 100 plus 40 tells us the selling price is 140%. So we have this row down here where we have both numbers, the selling price. Which value are we looking for here? Find the markup, right? The dollar amount of the markup. So we're looking for that amount right there. So the bottom row has both numbers. We need to keep the bottom row. The middle row, the markup is what we're looking for. So we can ignore the top row for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to cross multiply and divide. What two numbers are diagonal to each other right now? 40 and 40. So we multiply 40 times 40, which is 1600, and we divide by the 140. 40 times 40 divided by 140 is 11.4285. 11.43 we'll call it, $11.43. That was the dollar markup on that item. Unfortunately, what you could do is you could remember that since this is 100%, right, you add that 40% to it to get 140% as the selling price. You could do that selling price of 40 divided by 1.40. Well, what that's going to give you is 28.5714, 28.57. That gives you the cost, and then you would have to subtract to get back to the selling price. The selling price of 440, sorry, you'd subtract then to get back, sorry, to the cost. Or the, sorry, subtract the cost to get to the markup. I'll get myself tongue-tied a little bit here. Yeah, you take the selling price, subtract that cost of 28.57 to get to the markup. So to get to the markup directly, there isn't a quicker way than this table. I know some of you struggled with these tables when we did percent markups and percent increase and percent decrease in unit 1. I'm telling you, they're worth the effort to get used to because they do save a ton of mistakes. So let's look at, we have a dollar markup of $18. This is a, let's do this, a 60% markup on cost. Find the selling price. I'm gonna give you guys a second to see what you come up with there. So if we're looking at our table, we've got cost plus markup equals selling price. We'll put the percents on one side, dollars on the other. What do we know on the percent side? 60% markup. Also, we know that the 100 goes where? On the cost, which means we can very quickly find the selling price to be 160. What else are we given? Markup is $18. We are asked to find selling price, right? We're asked to find that one. So that means the markup's the row where we know both numbers. Selling price is the row we're looking for. We're going to ignore that top row for now. So what two numbers get multiplied? 160 and 80, or 18. 160 and 18 are diagonal, so we multiply those. And we divide by the 60, which gives us $48 is the selling price. What do you think? Yes. Yep. Yeah, you will always have at least three numbers. Can't do much unless you have at least. Here. Yep. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. One column is going to have two numbers. One of those is the one you're going to multiply. So let's look at this. Let's say we have a cost of $60, a selling price of $96. Find the percent markup on cost. Now, this is one we haven't done before. At least not in this format. So we have our table, cost plus markup equals selling price. We have the $60, where does that go? The dollar amount for the cost. How about the $96? Dollar amount for the selling price. There's two more numbers here. One number that we know and one number we can calculate quickly. What number do we know? The 100, and that goes on the cost. Now then, the one we can calculate quickly is this one. Whichever column we know two numbers in, we can find the third because it's always cost plus markup equals selling price. So what does this have to be to add up? 36, yes, 96 minus 60 is 36. 60 plus 36 is 96. So we can always find that missing number by either adding or subtracting to find the missing piece. Now, what are we asked to find? The percent markups. That's this number here. So now we have the top row where we have both numbers. The second row is the one that we're looking for. So we can ignore the bottom row. What two numbers get multiplied? 136, and we're going to divide by 60. 100 times 36 is 3,600. Divided by 60 is 60. That is a 60% markup on cost. What's that? Cool. So let's say we have an 80% markup on cost. I don't know why I start writing out the whole words all of a sudden. A selling price of $54. Find the dollar amount of the cost. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes for that. So cost plus markup equals selling price. What do we know here? The selling price is $54. What else do we know? 80% markup, 100 goes on the cost, because it's on cost. And of course, what goes here? 100 plus 80 is 180. We are looking for the dollar amount of the cost. So this is the row that we're looking for. This is the row that has both numbers. This time it's the middle row we have to ignore. What gets multiplied? The 54 and 100, right? 100 times 54, 5,400. Divided by 180 is 30 bucks, the cost. It's possible. You used the 80 and found this and then subtracted. Yeah. And that would work. It'd be 80 times 54 divided by 180 gives you $24. Yeah. Yep, that's just fine. So if our markup is, wow, our markup is $32, and this is a 40% markup on selling price, find the selling price, the dollar amount of the selling price. Something very subtle changed here. So it's still the exact same table. We're given the $32. Where does that go? On the markup. We're given the 40%. Where does that go? On the markup as well, markup percent. But there's one little difference here between this problem and the last one. Yeah, this was markup on cost. This is markup on selling price. Remember, that means based on selling price. Base is where the 100 goes. So in this one, the 100 has to go on the selling price. So that means up here, obviously this is not going to be 140, it's going to be 60. Because cost plus markup equals selling price. 60 plus 40 is 100. Now we're asked to find the selling price, which is this number here. Which row don't we need? The top row, the cost we can get rid of. So I have 100 times 32 divided by 40 is an $80 selling price. I wanted to show you one of those before we went on break. It is that time at 6:19. Let's go on break, come back at 6. Okay, so we've now come to that difference where it's markup based on selling price. So we have to, as we saw in that last example, put the 100% with the selling price. So if we have an example where we have a cost of $80 and we have a markup of, let's say 40% on selling price. And I ask you to find the dollar markup. So it's cost plus markup equals selling price. We have percents on one side and dollars on the other. What do we know? Well, where does the 80 go? The cost, the dollar side of the cost. 40, it's the percent markup. Where does the 100 go? On the selling price. What goes up here? 60, good. 60 plus 40 is 100. And we are looking for the dollar amount of the markup. That's this one here. So the top row is the one where we have both numbers. The middle row is the one we're looking for. So it's the bottom row that we can ignore. We will multiply 40 times 80 is 3,200 divided by 60, $53.33. What do you think? Not so bad? Still sucks. I'm gonna have you guys try a couple here. Let's start out with we have a cost, $70, a selling price of $150. Find percent markup on selling price. I'll give you a minute to work on that. So we've got our table. Starting at the top, $70 goes on cost. Next row, 150 goes selling price, dollar selling price. What piece of information do we still have to put in there? 100% goes on the selling price. Now there's something we can calculate real quickly. $80 markup, because these three numbers have to add up. 70 plus 80 is 150. What are we looking for? Obviously, we're looking for a percent. Is it the cost or the markup? Percent markup. So that's this one, which means we don't need the top row. We're going to multiply 100 times 80 divided by 150. 553. Yep. 53.33 or 53 and 1/3%. How many of you had that? No? Do you understand where it came from or do you have questions on it? Both? Let's do another example. Let's say that our markup is $42. We have a 30% markup on selling price. Find the dollar selling price. I'll give you a couple minutes to try that. Okay, so let's see where we're sitting here. We've got the $42. That is the markup. So it's the dollar side of the markup. 30% is the markup on the percent side. And again, there's always that one piece of information we're given. That's the 100%. This is on selling price. So the 100% goes with the selling price. Yep. The given? Where the 100 goes? Okay. If this says, yep, no, that's fine. If this says markup on selling price, that means the 100 goes with the selling price. If it says 30% markup on cost, that would mean the 100% would go with the cost. Yeah, whatever that says it's on, that's where the 100% has to go. Because really what that's saying is markup based on selling price. Yeah. Yeah. Usually the stated percent here is always going to go with the markup. It's where the 100 goes is either going to be cost or selling price. And that's whatever this markup percent is based on, is where the 100% goes. So since it's in the selling price, that means the cost here has to be 70. We are looking for selling price. That's this one. So the cost is, yes, cost can be ignored. 100 times 42 is 4,200. Divided by 30, $140. Oh yeah. Let's do this next one. We have a markup of $32. Actually, let me do a 20%. 20% markup on cost. Find the dollar amount of the selling price. Now, this looks like a very similar problem. Can anybody tell me what the major difference is here? Yeah. It's markup on cost, which means 100 goes here. I'll let you guys take it from there. So, yes, because it's 20% markup, the 20% goes on the markup, and it was on cost, so the 100% goes with the cost. So we add 100 plus 20 gives us 120 for the selling price. The dollar markup was $32. What are we asked to find? The dollar amount of the selling price. That's this number here. So top row is ignored. So yes, 100 and 120 times 32 is 3840 divided by 20, 192. So the selling price is $182. So that's that very subtle difference you have to watch out for, is that word on cost or on selling price. So let's just throw a few out there for you and see how you pick up on it. So let's say our selling price is $72. Our markup is $32. Find the percent markup on cost. I'll give you guys a couple. Okay, so cost plus markup equals selling price. What's that? Okay. Cost plus markup equals selling price. Selling price, $72. That's going to go on the selling price. Markup is $32. That goes on the markup, not on the cost. It's on the markup. Now we're looking for the percent markup, but it is a percent markup on cost, which means 100 goes on the cost. Now there's a piece here that we can calculate kind of quickly, and that is the dollar amount of the cost. Because we know those two have to add up to 72, we work backwards. 72 minus 32 is 40 for the cost. Now that we have that, which row don't we need? The selling price. What are we going to cross multiply? 100 times 32 divided by 40, which is 80. So that is an 80%. Oops. 80% markup on cost. Let's try another one. We have a cost of $35. We have a 30% markup on selling price. Find the dollar amount of the markup. I'll give you a minute on that. Okay, so we've got cost plus markup equals selling price. We're given the dollar amount of the cost, $35. So that goes on the dollar side for the cost. 30% markup, so that's 30% on the markup side. The rest of that line says on selling price, which means 100% goes on the selling price. We can calculate that the cost percent has to be 70, and we're asked to find the dollar markup. That's this one right here. Bottom row is ignored. 30 times 35 divided by 70 gives us a dollar markup of $15. Any questions there? Let's try this one. We are given a selling price of $44. We are given a 120% markup on cost. We're asked to find the dollar amount of the cost. I'll give you a couple minutes there. Are we ready? No, not really. It's possible. Let's take a look. Actually, I think you went the wrong direction. I think you went the wrong direction on it, actually. So we've got the selling price of 44. That goes here. You must have put it on the cost. Did you? Okay. 120% markup. That goes there. On cost means 100 goes on the cost. What goes here? 220. We've got to add those up. We're looking for the dollar cost up here. So it's the middle row we can ignore. So what do we multiply? 100 times 44 is 4,400. Divided by 220 is $20 cost. Yep, there'll be more. Remember, it's always cost plus markup equals selling price down both columns. We'll get there. I'm sensing a serious lack of trust here. The markup. Sorry, I shouldn't find that so funny. But your markup is $27. You have a 30% markup on selling price. Find the cost. I'll give you a minute. So again, cost plus markup equals selling price, percents and dollars. So the dollar markup is $27. That goes here. 30% markup. That goes here, excuse me. On selling price means 100 goes in the selling price. That's not a good response. So what goes up here? 70. I think you've got it. It's just, yeah. I think you've got the concept. It's just getting it into the table. So 70% goes up there, and we are looking for the dollar cost, which is that one. So this one is ignored. 70 times 27 divided by 30. Is that 60? 63. Thank you. Oh, we're going to do a couple more. Don't worry. So let's say we have a markup. A markup of $24. The 40% markup on cost. Find the dollar amount of the selling price. Okay, so we've got the same table. Where's the $24 go? Dollar side of the markup. 40%. That goes 40% markup on cost, right? So 100% goes on the cost. What goes on the selling price down here? 140. We're looking for, bless you again. We're looking for the dollar amount of the selling price right there. So we don't need the top row. 140 times 24 divided by 40 is $84. Cool. Oh, let's do one more. Actually, let's do it the opposite way. We've got a cost of $27. We have a 70% markup on selling price. Find the dollar selling price for me. Okay, so our table is the same. Where's the $27 go? Cost, good. 70% markup. Where's the 100% go? On the selling price. What goes up here then? 30%. 30 plus 70 equals 100. We are looking for selling price, so we don't need this row. So 100 times 27 divided by 30 is $90. Okay. Peyton's Purses uses a 45%, oops, I don't know why I put a dollar sign on there, 45% markup on selling price. Peyton sees a purse that would sell for $80. How much can Peyton pay for that purse? Now, the key to a problem like this is picking apart what does everything stand for. I mean, the only thing that's pretty clear here is the 40% markup on selling price. So let's put that in our chart right now. This is Peyton's Purses, a business. Yes, Peyton is a retailer. The 45% markup on selling price means 45 goes in for the markup. 100% goes where? Selling price, which means the cost is 55. Right? Now the question is, what does the 80 stand for? It would sell for 80. That is the selling price. That's what Peyton would turn around and sell it to a customer for. We want to know how much Peyton can pay for it. We're trying to find what would Peyton's cost be. So we don't need the middle row. Yeah, 80 times 55 divided by 100 is $44. Is that right? So Peyton can afford to pay $44 for that purse and still accomplish a 45% markup on the selling price. Does that make sense? Okay. Gary's Crafts uses a 35% markup on cost. Yes, I know Crafts is spelled wrong, by the way, but it's the business name. Carrie finds a, oh, let's see. Well, just for lack of creativity, we're going to call it a model that would sell for $130. How much should Carrie pay for it? Oops, should Carrie in there. We'll give you guys a minute to see what you come out of that with. Cost plus markup equals selling price. Percents in dollars. Let's start out with the 35% markup on cost. So 35 goes in the markup, 100 goes cost, 135 is the selling price. 130 goes, so they would sell it for. We're looking for the cost, right? Yes, we cross off the markup. So 100 times 130 divided by 135 is what? 9630? Okay, cool. Well, feeling better about them. That's good. Like I said, I think you were very, very close for a long time. It was just putting things in the wrong spot. Now, we've looked at two different markups. Markup on cost has some definite advantages because you know what an object costs. It's easy for pricing to take the cost and just multiply by that markup percent, right? To get that markup. So for pricing objects, it's really easy if you have that markup percent on cost to just mark it up and find what you're going to sell it for, find the price you're going to sell it for. But when it comes to bookkeeping, percent markup on selling price is more beneficial. When you're managing a business, it's easier to find your total sales and your total expenses. We talked about overhead, electricity, stuff like that, and your labor costs and stuff, and your profit, how much you need in profit to make it worth to run the business. It's easy to figure out those things. Well, of course, remember the markup is the expenses and the profit. So it's easy to figure out what those are as a percentage of total sales. That would be a percent markup on selling price. So in business, often it's important, it's needed, it's essential to be able to switch from a percent markup on cost to a percent markup on selling price, or the other way around. So for example, let's say that we have a business that calculates, in order to cover its expenses and make a reasonable profit, it needs a 40% markup on the selling price. In other words, 40% of its total sales needs to be markup in order to cover those expenses and make a reasonable profit. So when we go to price items, what is the equivalent markup on cost? This is not as difficult as it sounds. There's a couple of ways we can go about this. I'm going to do this. Cost plus markup equals selling price. Notice I've got the left side elongated a little bit here. The right side's still going to be dollars. On the left side, there's actually going to be two columns. One column is going to be the percent on selling price, because that's the one I'm starting with. I know the percent on selling price is 40%. Where does the 40 go? The markup. Where does 100 go? On the selling price. What would go in for the cost? 60. There we go. 60 plus 40 equals 100. Now in this first example, I'm going to make it easier for us. I'm going to put some numbers in here on the dollar side. Can somebody just pick a number that we want to use for the cost? 94. How about we make a nice even number, make it easy on us? 90. There we go. Not to shoot you down, but no use. No use making it harder on ourselves when we have to. Pick anyone, but not that one. So now we can figure out, from what we have here, we can figure out the amount of the markup if we wanted to. That would be 40 times 90 divided by 60, which would be well, we're cutting this out for now, right? We're not looking at that. This is gonna be what, 60? $60. So we're gonna find the selling price down here to be 150, right? Just the 90 plus 60. Well, the first column we have over here is going to be our percent markup on cost. Now, if we're converting that to an equivalent markup on cost, where would the 100% go if we're dealing with a markup on cost? On the cost, right? And what we're concerned with finding is the percent markup here. So now I can ignore this column completely for now. I can ignore the bottom row too right now. I'm going to go ahead and do 100 times 60 divided by 90, which is going to be 66.67. Yeah, 66.666. Now the cool thing about this, we made up these prices over here. I didn't necessarily even need those prices over here. I could have just done right over in this part here, I could have done 100 times 40 divided by 60, and what do I get? I get the 66.67. Yep. Okay, it's the same chart. The keyword is still on cost or on selling price. This one, we're given a 40% on selling price, right? So that means where we put that one in, the 40 goes on the markup and the 100 goes on the selling price. Yes. Now, in fact, we don't even have to do this dollar column over here if we don't want to. Let me show you. Let's say whether it says on cost or on selling price. There's always the difference. So find the equivalent markup on selling price. for a 40% markup on cost. So we have a 40% markup on cost. We want to find the equivalent markup on selling price. I'm not even going to do the right side over here. We're going to just leave that blank. On the left side here, I'm going to put percent markup on cost and percent markup on selling price. I have the 40%. Which column is that going to go in? Markup on cost. Very good. That goes in for the markup there. So again, your keyword that says markup on cost, so we're using the markup on cost column. In that column, where does 100 have to go? On the cost. Which means we can find this number is going to be 140. Now, as we go to convert it to a percent markup on selling price, what do we know in the selling price column? 100 has to go in the selling price. So with these columns, in this column, in the column on the 1% on cost, 100 has to go there on the cost. In the column for the percent on selling price, 100 has to go on the selling price. Those two numbers, those two 100s will always be there. We're trying to find then the percent markup in the selling price column. So I don't need this top row, do I? It's going to be 40 times 100, which is 400, divided by 140, which is 28.57143. We'll call it 28.57%. What do you think? Kind of a mess? It's not terrible? Yeah. The key is once it clicks that 100, if it's on cost, that 100 goes with the cost. If it's on selling price, 100 goes with the selling price. Everything else has to fit. Okay, it is time for a break. It's 7:21. Let's come back in at 7:30. Okay, so, oops, go ahead. It'll take me a while to get this set up anyway. Do you guys need another minute yet? So let's take a look here. Before I even look at the problem, I can fill in two numbers in this table. In the markup, the percent markup on cost column, the 100 is always going to go with the cost. The percent markup on selling price column, the 100 is always going to go on the selling price. Those two numbers I can put in there without even looking at the problem. Now in the problem I see 50% markup. Which column does that go in? Selling price. It's right here. So I can find the third number in that column, which will be the cost, and that's going to be 50. 50 plus 50 is 100. So I need to find the markup in that first column on the cost. I'm going to ignore this bottom piece. 100 times 50 divided by 50 is 100. That's 100%. Yeah. Think about it. These compare. If it's a markup on selling price of half is the cost, half is the markup, that means the cost and the markup are equal. Okay. Well, our next step is to talk about spoilage. Spoilage can take place in a couple of different forms. One is perishable products. This is most often food, and it can take the form of two things: expiration date like meat, do not sell after a certain date or whatever, or a fresh factor. A bakery, even though those donuts are still good tomorrow, they're not going to sell them tomorrow. They are day old. Yeah, it's just not the same. So they sell them fresh. Of course, another thing might be trendy items. Fashion is one. Clothes can only sit on the rack for so long before they're no longer fashionable. So let's take a look at how this works. There are just some additional steps that come into the equation when we have to deal with perishables. So we're going to start out with the easier case, which is just a bakery or food. So let's look at Kim's Bakery. Produces 200 donuts per day. Each day at a cost of 30 cents each per donut. Kim requires, now we're going to make these easy for you. Usually businesses, if I say they require, they're going to give a markup based on selling price. We're just going to assume we've already converted that to a markup based on cost. So let's say Kim requires a 35% markup on cost. If 5% will spoil before being sold, but where does that 5% come from? Well, that's just a historical number. Kim knows that in the past, about 5%, about 1 out of every 20, is still sitting there at the end of the day. So they don't get sold. So if 5% will spoil before being sold, how much should Kim charge per donut? So this requires a couple of extra steps at the beginning and a couple of extra steps at the end. Actually, one extra step at the beginning and a couple extra steps at the end. In the beginning, our first step, rather than doing it per item, we find a total cost. What does it cost to produce all of these donuts? Well, we have 200 donuts. How much does it cost each? 30 cents. That's a total cost of $60. Step 2 is to use the markup to find the total selling price. So this is our chart. Cost plus markup equals selling price. Only what's going in here now is not just the cost of a single item, it is total cost of $60. What was our percent markup required here? 35% markup on cost. So the 100 goes in the cost. Now we can find this number here. We can always fill in the third number on the percent side. What's this going to be? 135, correct? And we are looking in step 2, we are always looking for the total selling price. So we're looking for this number here. We will ignore the middle row. What's next? Cross multiply. 135 times 60 divided by 100. $81. Any questions so far? So that is the total selling price for that batch of donuts. We need to get $81 out of that. Step 3, find the number sold. And in parentheses, I'm also going to put the number spoiled. Because right now we don't necessarily need the number spoiled, but in related problems that we'll do later, you might. So find the number sold. 200 were produced. What percent spoiled? 5%. So times 0.05 gives us 10 that spoiled. How many get sold? 200 minus 10 is 190 that are sold. Right? Any questions there? Last step. Find the unit selling price. The unit selling price is equal to total selling price divided by the number of units sold. Our total selling price here was $81. How many units are going to be sold? 190. They require a 40, of course, rounded to the nearest penny, that's going to be 43 cents. So each donut has to sell for 43 cents in order to cover expenses and clear off that, was it 35 or 45% markup? 35% markup on cost. Any questions there? Let's do another example. So, Sammy's Cookies. Oh, let's talk about donuts and cookies. Oh, I'm getting hungry. Talk about food with the fat guy in the room. Sammy's Cookies produces 500. What's that? I know. Sammy's Cookies produces 500 cookies per day at a cost of 12 cents per cookie. Sammy expects 20% to break or spoil without being sold. Sammy uses a 60% markup on cost. How much should be charged per cookie? Give me a nod when everybody's got it written down. Okay. Seeing most of the heads. What's that? Yeah, it took forever. So the first step again is to find the total cost. How do we find the total cost? Got 500 cookies times 12 cents each, which gives us what? $60? That is our total cost. Any questions there? What's step 2? Use the markup to find the total selling price. That's our table. Cost plus markup equals selling price. The $60 goes in there for the dollar amount of the cost. 60% markup on cost. So 60% goes for the markup. 100% goes on cost. What goes down here? $160, good. 100 plus 60 is 160. We're always looking for this number over here. So we're going to ignore that middle row. 160 times 60 divided by 100. $96 is our total selling price. We need to get $96 out of this batch of cookies. Any questions there? Okay. Okay. Step 3. Find the number sold and number spoiled. So in here we have 500 cookies. What percent spoiled? 20%. So times 0.2 means 100 spoil. That's kind of sad. Yeah, I mean, breakage is a huge thing there. So how many are sold? Yeah, 500 total minus the 100 that spoiled gives us 400 sold. What is our next step? Find the unit selling price. And that unit selling price is always found by taking the total selling price, $96, divided by the units that are sold, 400. We get 24 cents each. So each cookie has to sell for 24 cents. What do you think? Not so bad? Ready to try one all on your own? Oh, that's coming. Yeah, good thought. Give me 5 minutes. Actually, there are companies out there that have had stuff like that where they've had their waste and they figured out how to market their waste, where they've ended up making more off the waste than what they were off the original product. Um, it's not Jerome's Foods anymore, but Jerome's Foods, the big turkey producer, for those of you from out of town, Jennie-O now, they used to actually pay farmers to let them spread the manure that they cleaned out of the turkey barns on their field so they can get rid of it. Well, it ended up being a very valuable fertilizer, much better than cow manure. So farmers started asking for it and begging for it. So then they started charging the farmers to spread it. I mean, those waste products can become a huge moneymaker. I spelled that way wrong, didn't I? We're going to pretend that says apparel. Alex is apparel. Carl's clothes is sushi. Sure. I like that. Alex is apparel. I try to use unisex names too, so it's yeah. Alex is apparel buys 40 shirts at $6 each. 5% will go out of style without being sold. So it's basically they spoiled. Alex needs 80% markup on cost. How much should Alex charge per shirt? I'll give you guys a few minutes. Let's see how we're doing here. Step one is total cost. Found by doing I might not be buying from you. No. So total cost is 40 times $6 each is $240. Two, we're going to do the markup to find the total selling price. So if cost plus markup equals selling price, that cost of $240 goes in there. We had a markup of 80% on cost. 80% is our markup. It's on cost, so 100 goes with the cost. 180 is the selling price. We're looking for that number. 180 times 240 divided by 100 is $432. That is our total required selling price. Step three, number sold, number spoiled, or number out of style. Well, we have 40 shirts. What percent go out of style or spoil? 5, so 0.05. That means 2, right? 2, we'll call it spoil. That means then that 40 minus 2, or 38, are going to sell. Step 4 is unit selling price. We do that by $432 total selling price divided by the number sold. Sounds right. $11.37. T-shirts, yes. Now, that's the end of the stuff that you would be expected to know on a test. The next problem I'm about to ask would be an extra credit type question on a test. But it's also very realistic. It's what you brought up earlier about crumble the cookies up and make a cookie crumble cake or whatever. So let's look at Pat's Pastries. Produces 400 bars each day at a cost of 18 cents each. 15% will break or spoil. Now, in this case, spoil means they go past the day old. So it's not like they're like moldy and nasty. They just didn't sell on that first day. What's that? Yes, depends on their standard. Quick Trip, I think they sit there for a week or two, don't they? Yeah. So anyway, Pat needs a 55%. My abbreviation markup on cost. Spoiled bars are sold at 20 cents each. How much should Pat sell the good bars for? I know that's really poor grammar, but it's after 8 o'clock and I don't care. So step one is still the same. Step one is total cost, which is going to be found by doing 400 bars times 18 cents, otherwise known as $72. Step two is the same. I'm not going to put the label on it. I'm just going to do it. Cost plus markup equals selling price. 72 goes dollar amount of the cost. Our percent markup was 55 on cost. Don't know where my cost disappeared to. Let's write that back in. So since it's on cost, 100 goes in the cost, which makes this number here. Wow, numbers are disappearing left and right. Sorry about that. This number down here is 155. And we're looking for this total selling price. So we don't need the middle row. 155 times 72 divided by 100 gives us 111.60. Very good. $111.60 is our total required selling price. Step three is mostly the same. Step three is still find the number sold and number spoiled. How many were produced? 400. Spoilage percent was 15. So 400 times 0.15 is 30 that are broken or spoiled. So 400 minus 30 give us, is it 60? I'm sorry. 60, there we go. So 400 minus 60 is 340 that are sold. Now there's a little intermediate step here before we go on to step 4. That's cost recovery from spoiled items. We have the 60 that spoiled, and we sold them at how much each? 20 cents. You're absolutely correct. We got $12 out of those spoiled bars. Now we said we only needed to get $111.60 out of this batch to get our total selling price. So we're going to subtract that $12 that we recovered from that total selling price. Which is telling us we only need to get $99.60 out of the ones that are sold. What's that? The 111 was the total selling price, right? Yep, that was from the 55% markup. Now to get the number sold or get the amount to charge for each, step 4 is the unit selling price. That's the total dollar amount, which is now the $99.60 divided by the 340 that sell. What'd you get? I think there's a decimal point off there. I think it's 29 cents. Yes, it is. 29 cents. So that cost recovery is not that complicated. It's just that one little extra step where you got to figure out what do you get out of those spoiled items and subtract that from your total. Because you don't need to get, you already got that money back, you don't need to get it again. So it allows you to sell your items for a little bit cheaper. Now, in many cases, that's not a big deal, but if you're in a very competitive market, shaving a couple of cents per item off your price can give you an advantage. Any questions? Mm-hmm. Oh, I have friends that, bless you, I have friends that for like groceries that can tell you Aldi's is cheaper on milk and grapes or whatever, and Walmart is cheaper on these. Oh, they are, but I mean, they can tell you which stores are cheaper on which items, and they'll go to 3 different stores to buy groceries. I don't care. Is she? Yeah. There is a new quiz that is due tomorrow, Thursday, at 11:59 p.m. There's a new homework that is due 2 weeks from tonight. That's March 28th, because next week there is no homework or no class. Now remember, very unfortunate timing, but this is the end of Unit 2. So Test 2 will be our next class, which is 2 weeks from tonight. As always, if you want to come in earlier in the day, you're welcome to. At Rice Lake, I'll be in this room. At our other campuses, I will send it Tuesday night, so it'll be there right away Wednesday morning. So anytime Wednesday, you can go in and take the test. Yes. So again, books and notes can be used on the test. You'll have as much time as you need, just you got to do it all on the same day. It's the biggest thing. Okay, you guys have a great night.